What's going on, everybody? CFB Week 14. Welcome to the SHIPIT Nation College Football Show. My name's Bill. Put a dollar in front of it. You'll find me on Twitter and Discord. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. If I'm lacking a little energy for this show, it's because we just got done with Thanksgiving being recorded on Thursday night. We'll break down the fourth wall a little bit. So I'm full. I'm going to push through, but just you got to know that I'm doing it with a full belly and maybe tired eyes here and there, but I will say, I'm just glad Texas isn't on this slate because if I had to talk about Quinn Ewers, it might just put me right to sleep. Anyway, pushing to 10K, still pushing for 10K subscribers on YouTube on the SHIPIT Nation channel. We're right about to 9,000, so we're almost there. Again, we're going to be planning some big giveaways once we get to 10,000, so you're definitely going to want to be a part of that party. Right below this screen here, you can click subscribe. Maybe you're already subscribed, and that's not an issue. Then just go ahead and like it. That helps us out a lot. To help us continue bringing you this free content on YouTube. We're going to jump right into the slate, starting with, it's actually a pretty good slate for Week 14. Some missed prices for sure. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the first game is Louisville at Kentucky, just a 4-point spread, fairly low total. Not a whole lot for either team in this game, just pride and maybe a better bowl for Louisville. So we're looking at Tyler Shuck, his price is solid. Not the easiest matchup, though. Kentucky does have a pretty stout defense. They've given a little bit here and there, but not really a whole lot. In the running game, same sort of deal. Like teams have had some success against Kentucky a little bit, like Texas and Auburn. Florida even had 200 yards on the ground. So, again, not the worst matchup, but not running to play. And Isaac Brown, apparently healthy the week after I played him. I'm sure a few of you joined me a couple of weeks ago when he left the game in like the first drive or something. A little bit bitter. We all know Ja'Cory Brooks, decent price. His double-digit targets are likely for him. Chris Bell has been the wide receiver 2. Redmond has been looking fine until he had 0 targets last week. He's still okay at tight end. But if you want to get greasy, Katoris Hicks, his routes have increased the last 2 weeks. Now starting with, a lot of injuries and opt-outs or whatever with this Louisville wide receiver course. So Katoris Hicks, not bad. 6 receptions on 6 targets last week after a 4-target week the week before. So it does seem like Shuck is trying to find Katoris. Oh, shoot. Katoris as much as he can. Anywho, that's a good transition. Let's go to the next game. But anyway, Hicks. Should have just gone with Hicks. But we're not really looking much at that game. Kind of same with this next game, South Carolina at Clemson. Sellers is in a good spot at this price. Especially with South Carolina, maybe they have a real outside chance at getting to the CFP. It's not likely, but it's not zero. It'd have to be pretty complete chaos. But Sellers you think of for his running upside, but he's thrown for 302 straight. Yes, one of them was against Wofford. But the rushing upside is still there for him too at this price. Even in a sloggy matchup, you're looking at him. Kind of the same thing with Rocket Sanders. It's a volume play between his running and receiving. He's had at least 16 touches in 5 straight games, including more than 20 in 3 of the last 4. So I don't mind him at 6'2". And then this wide receiver room is really cheap. Simon's a tight end. He'd been pretty steady. He didn't play last game. Jared Brown didn't play last game. It could have just been because they played an FCS team, Wofford. So, Nick Harbor has a big play upside. All of these guys have a chance at finding the box, but there's better matchups that we'll talk about later. If you do need a cheap receiver, I don't mind one of those. I really don't like him, though. Clemson, Cade Klubnik, 8,600. Clemson needs help regardless. They need to win, obviously, to make it into the ACC championship game, but they would need Miami to lose. So they're going to try to win the game. Klubnik at 8,600 always has potential. Just don't know if I like this matchup for him, especially, Clemson is down on line. We already knew that tackle went down on the first play against Pitt. His replacement tore his ACL in practice this week. So their O-line is beaten up, and this is not a good matchup to have, your third string left tackle or left guard or, whoever they shuffle their line. You don't want to have a ragtag bunch of guys on your O-line for this matchup with South Carolina. Maffa, kind of the same deal as Klubnik. He's had a couple of stinkers. I mean, they played the Citadel last week, so I don't know that they needed to do a whole lot, but again, tough matchup, bad offensive line, always the potential for Maffa. Antonio Williams, that's what we do know is he's still wide receiver 1. Still the clear favorite. Wesco and Moore getting a lot of looks. Jake Brenningstool didn't play last week, but again, it was a Citadel. Troy Stelato's out for the season, so we could see some more usage funnel to those top 4 guys. We don't really know what his clear replacement is going to be for Stellato because they played an FCS team last week. It didn't give us a real clear idea of what the rotation would be against a Power 5 opponent or Power 4 opponent. But we might get some Olsen Pat Henry, the tight end, playing more in the slot a little bit, or Myson Kelly. He's a slot receiver, but hasn't seen much work. Maybe, but again, there's going to be better games to get to. Might be a good real life game. Tennessee at Vanderbilt, 10.5 point spread, but Vandy at home. We know this can get sneaky. Tennessee, you win, keep your chances alive for the college football playoff. Nico Iamaleava at 5,500. I know he hasn't been great this year, but he has shown some flashes. Granted, it was UTEP and Mississippi State, but he's cheap. You can get through yards through the air against Vandy. I don't mind taking a shot on Nico at 5.5. Dylan Sampson, we kind of know what we're going to get. He's a workhorse. He's been a workhorse. He probably will continue to be a workhorse. And then in the wide receiver room, again, kind of like South Carolina, cheap. Upside has been there for a few of these guys. Brew McCoy and Squirrel White have looked pretty good lately. But then you got like Dante Thornton, who started over Chris Brazzell last week. They also played UTEP, which not an FCS team, but for Tennessee, close enough. And then Miles Kitzelman has been getting some more looks. So it's tough to pick a guy. McCoy probably be the top guy from that wide receiver room. If you like Nico to get there through the air, he's probably going to take at least one of these guys with him, especially at this price. Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, always on my radar. Vandy's already bowl eligible, so I don't know how much they're going to. They want to win this game. Another upset, these kids want to win. But as far as like implications, it doesn't mean a whole lot. AJ Newberry's has been ruled out already on the SEC injury report, but I don't think that means a whole lot other than more funneling to Alexander and Pavia on the ground game. Eli Stower is still very much involved as wide receiver / tight end hybrid one. But Sherrill and Skinner have been getting a lot more looks lately. Skinner has 21 targets over the last 4. Sherrill has 20 targets over the last 4. Tennessee is a tough matchup, but maybe a little bit more vulnerable through the air. So if you're going to attack them, that's probably where I would do it. But, Pavia, again, it's the Pavia effect. He's always on my radar regardless of matchup. West Virginia at Texas Tech. This is one of the games I mentioned before that is definitely more worth looking at. I don't know if you guys watched last week, but the Texas Tech Oklahoma State game exploded. This has the potential to do the same thing. Neither of these teams are very interested in playing defense most of the time. And what's even better is both of these teams are still alive for the Big 12 championship. It would have to be chaos. There'd have to be some tiebreakers, but you want to win this game. For West Virginia, Garrett Green, we know his ceiling. He had a bum game last week, but it's another great matchup. Upside is definitely there. 7,600 is a very fair price. Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. Donaldson outpaced White last game. Both had touchdowns. CJ had 2. They're both probably underpriced as long as they can run the ball, which on Texas Tech, you can run the ball. So they could both easily get there at that price. Not to a point where I'd really play both in one lineup. Although it's not the worst thing I've ever heard, but it's not ideal in my mind. And then Hudson Clement, same sort of thing with Traylon Ray out for the season. Jaden Bray having that setback and not coming back. Another opportunity for Clement to be wide receiver 1. Cole Taylor, Justin Robinson, Rodney Gallagher, all fine options. Those guys all kind of stunk last week, but again, it's a smash spot. And when your quarterback doesn't have the greatest game, it's harder for wide receivers to have a great game. It can still happen, but if Green has a better game this week, it could mean, good things for all of these wide receivers. And then Texas Tech, Baron Morton. I played him last week, and he was part of the reason I cashed. 6,400, not priced up enough. Douglas, 4,800 after his ceiling game, not priced up enough. Kelly is still a fair price, despite, he had a down game last week. I don't know if it's allowed for Kelly and Douglas to both have big games on the same week. I don't remember the last time it's happened. It seems like it's been one or the other. Coy Eakin is still fine. Jalen Conyers had a couple of great games, back to back here recently at 3,400. So the upside's there for him. This passing game, again, it's a prolific offense against a bad defense. And Taj Brooks, just go watch the Baylor West Virginia game again and tell me Taj Brooks doesn't have the opportunity to run for 250 yards here. 9-9 is still, again, fair. That's the best way I can put it with his potential. We saw it. He had a 50-point or a 56, 57-point game last week. Could easily repeat here. This is one of those games you want to target. We've seen these high total games just go off. The overs have hit by a long way, just as we saw in Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Now, this isn't guaranteed to be a replication of that, but it definitely has one of the highest potential to on this slate, or, one of the highest games to have that potential. Kansas at Baylor. Kansas, a 1.5-point favorite on the road. Jalen Daniels, again, with a total like this, a game environment like this, you're definitely going to take a look at him. 7,100, kind of getting a little high, especially considering what he's done lately. They've won games. The ceiling could be there. It's just you're going to find some cheaper options later that, again, great spot. And, maybe you land on him a little bit more in GPP than like a cash play. The cash play in this game is probably Devin Neal. 8,700. He had 37 carries last week, and Daniel Highshaw's left the team. So we know where the usage is going to go. Neal was an absolute tank, just like Brooks had a 50-plus point game last week. Arnold was back, but it still seemed like Grimm is number one. Grimm is a wide receiver one. Again, he's kind of in that middle range of wide receiver. There's plenty of options below 4K. So if you want pieces of this game, I'm looking at Daniels and Neal first, but I don't hate going to a wide receiver. There's always that chance that Daniels can take one of them with him if he gets it done through the passing game. And same for the Baylor side. I feel the same way with this Baylor passing game. Sawyer Robertson has been great. He's had a couple of down games, over the last few, but 7,700 is a good price for him in this matchup. Outside of BYU, Kansas has been, high scoring games over the last few games, especially, Iowa State and Colorado were able to get to them through the air. So that, puts me on Robertson a little bit more. As for which wide receiver it's going to be, like I said, it's take your pick. Hawkins and Cameron seem to be the number one and number two guys. Trigg, the tight end, has some, solid target share. Hal Presley has a decent target share. He's just hasn't been effective with those targets recently. Monterey Baldwin's kind of a spike guy. He's going to have a big play here or there at min price. If he gets a 60-yard touchdown, you're set. But, again, kind of looking at the running back here too, Bryson Washington with, I'm back. Bryson Washington with the, workhorse ability, especially, Pendergrass and Reese have barely seen the field. So I'm looking at 26 carries and 28 carries the last two, and it's like, he's getting the ball. Neal's getting the ball. I'm really looking at those running backs in this game. A game I'm not looking at quite as much, Michigan and Ohio State. I'd love an upset here at the Horseshoe, but Michigan is, they scored 50 points last week, but it was against a Northwestern team. This is kind of let's just be Michigan and keep beating Ohio State. But I don't know if this is the year they're going to continue that. I can't play either of these quarterbacks. Mullings is a maybe. He had a pretty big game again against Northwestern. Edwards had a decent game, Northwestern. But the only team to really move the ball on Ohio State on the ground was Oregon. Iowa kind of did, but I don't love it. Loveland at least has a target share, but 56 is just too much. We've talked about several wide receivers already that are cheaper than him that have, similar opportunity. On the Ohio State side, it's just a price thing. Will Howard's a little bit too expensive. Michigan's defense isn't terrible. So maybe, but Howard's really only gotten there once in the last 5 games, and that was against Purdue. So it's hard for me to get there. Judkins and Henderson eat into each other. They're just too expensive for what their roles are. Jeremiah Smith and Egbuka, this is the cheapest they've been all year. Well, Smith was cheaper week 1. He was like 54 or 5,500. But this is as cheap as he's been since week 1, the cheapest Egbuka's been all season. So if you want a piece of this game, those are probably the shots I would take. And this is honestly the first time Jeremiah Smith's been below 7K at all since week 1. So don't mind looking there. Auburn at Alabama, the Iron Bowl. This game is always exciting, always a chance for fireworks, always a chance for something crazy to happen. Peyton Thorne, 6,700. Don't mind it. Alabama's defense is not super scary, and Thorne can help some with his legs. He really is not going to hurt you with his legs, but he does have a little bit of upside there. And at 6,700, He's on the cheaper end for quarterback, so I don't mind it. Jarquez Hunter, also probably too cheap. Again, Alabama's defense just watched the Oklahoma game last week, and you can run the ball on them. And Hunter has had, a few spike games here these past few weeks. So he's a solid option at 62. But the one that really sticks out is Cam Coleman. He's had a couple of monster games the last 2 weeks, and they're still not pricing him up. He's kind of that true freshman coming out of his shell. The talent's there. He's from Alabama, going up against another true freshman, Ryan Williams. I mean, Coleman's probably going to get up for this game. Again, like one of his ceiling games was against UL Monroe, but the other one was Texas A&M. So, the potential is definitely there, and this price is very, very friendly. And Rivaldo Fairweather is now on the injury report for Auburn, so that could funnel even more to Coleman. It just seems like a smash spot for him. But like I said, you can play Thorne, Hunter, Coleman, and it's they're not terrible plays even as an 11.5-point underdog. Again, crazy things can happen in this game. Alabama, Milroe is Milroe. He can carry this team by himself, and he might have to. We'll see. Auburn's defense hasn't been awful, hasn't been great. But Alabama's offense is very, very good. Auburn's probably been watching that Oklahoma game and figuring out what they did to stop them. So don't think that Alabama's just going to come in here and walk all over Auburn, but they do need to win to keep their hopes alive for the CFP. So there's so many different ways this game could go. Milroe always has a shot. Jam Miller's kind of taken over a little bit lately, but the Oklahoma game was a weird game. So I don't know if we can take anything from that. He outpaced Justice Haynes by quite a bit, but at 4K and 3.6, I mean, they're cheap. If you're really looking to get a piece of this Alabama run game, that's really what I can say about them. Wide receivers, Jeremy Bernard, safe floor, 4,100, great cash. Like, he screams cash. Like, he's going to get you 10 to 15 points, not going to explode. Ryan Williams is kind of that explosion guy. Even at 6,700, he has had some ceiling games. He has had some basement games. So those two are kind of the definition of two guys on one team that are like, one's more of a GPP, one is cash. Like, and it's really clear right in front of you. You just have to look at the box scores. You don't you can watch the games and gather the same information, but Ryan Williams, big spike games. Jeremy Bernard, steady as she goes. Arkansas and Missouri, another close game, decent total. This one could get sneaky, a sneaky shootout. Taylor Green crushes bad teams, underperforms against good teams. It's kind of how it's been. Depends on what you consider Missouri. Is Missouri a good football team? Basically, every Power 4 team they've played has been able to put points up on them. So, take that for what you will. Jaquindon Jackson had 16 carries last week against La Tech, but was underwhelming. But at least we know that the volume is kind of back there after he missed a few games with injury. This could be his breakout game coming off of that injury. Mississippi State just averaged almost 7 yards a carry on Mizzou. And we saw what Jaquindon Jackson could do earlier this season. So if he and Green are clicking and going, that's how I see this game kind of starting to shoot out a little bit, because Arkansas can move the ball and their defense isn't very good. At least their pass defense isn't very good. And then Armstrong is still the guy on the Arkansas wide receiver core. 6,300. Okay price. It's a fair price. I mean, he's got 8 targets or more in every single game, including 14 targets last week. Satagna, Haas, Tisla'a getting some targets, but not to the extent that Armstrong is. And Tyrone Broden might be in the doghouse. He only played like 7 snaps, and they were all on special teams last week against Louisiana Tech. But if you've heard me mention that there are cheaper quarterbacks, it's because Brady Cook is 4,900. I don't know what they're doing. Like, Arkansas is a pass funnel. Brady Cook's a solid quarterback. There's no reason, like, 6,000, 6,500. I could see him being on the cheaper side, but 4,900 just seems egregious in this spot. There is a completely random shot Mizzou could still make the CFP. They would have to have a lot of things happen, but the opportunity is still there, honestly, with how much chaos there's been in college football the last few weeks. And they love it, and the committee loves the SEC. So, they're going to be playing. They're going to be playing for something in this game, and Brady Cook at 4,900 is just egregious. Nate Noel is too cheap at 5,100. He's had 25 and 27 carries the last two. Carroll actually had 14 carries last game as well, but it was against Mississippi State, so they just ran the ball a lot more. And then Luther Burden, cheapest he's been all season. So that Brady Cook and Luther Burden stack only costing $12,000 and having 38 left to work with for the rest of your roster is phenomenal. It allows you have one cheap quarterback, a decently priced wide receiver, you can pay up for studs. And then you got Cam Coleman at 3,900. There's enough cheap options. Go one of those Baylor options, one of those cheaper Kansas wide receivers. Like, there's plenty of options, and you can get creative and pay up where you want to. There's plenty of cheap options. So really looking at Cook, Noel, and Burden, maybe Weiss. I think Burden might garner a little bit of ownership being as cheap as he is, but you want to stay with, some sort of Missouri stack, but not spend as much, or, spend your money elsewhere. Weiss is there too. Arizona State at Arizona. One good football team and one pretty bad football team. That's all I can say. Arizona State needs to win. I mean, nobody in the Big 12 is winning in, but Arizona State's as close as you can get. And they're probably out for revenge because Arizona thumped them 59-23 last year. So now Arizona State's the better team. Levitt at 7,300. He's a fair price. He's hit this value more than he hasn't. He's got skill players to help him get there. And plus, he hasn't really had negative rushing at all this year, so he's not going to bring you backwards with that. And the reason you like Sam Levitt a lot is because his top two target getters are Jordan Tyson and Cam Scatabo. And Cam Scatabo was back to the Scatabo of old last week. And you can get to Arizona however you want. UCF had 308 on the ground. West Virginia had 203. Kansas State had 235. And like I said, Scatabo has the second most targets on the team. So 10-1, tough price to pay. But remember that Missouri stack we just talked about? That is what allows you to get Scatabo in your lineup if you want to play him. Like, it makes it easier to get those expensive guys that you want in your lineup. So Scatabo and Brooks, can you do it together? I know it's a heck of a lot easier with a $4,900 quarterback. Jordan Tyson, just been on an absolute tear. 7 or more receptions, not targets, 7 or more receptions in 4 straight. And he's either had 100 yards or a touchdown in 7 straight games, sometimes 2 touchdowns, sometimes well over 100, sometimes both. So 6,700, very fair for him. After him, it's Mateo, Guillory, Stovall. Smith is questionable, but it's those 3 guys, Levis, Scatabo, and Tyson. On the Arizona side, I don't know what to tell you about these guys. They had such a high ceiling and high potential coming into the season. Fafita's only hit 3x this value or this price 3 times all year. So, no, twice. 3x this value twice all year. And it was against West Virginia, New Mexico. So it's hard to click in that range, especially we know right across the street, Sam Levitt at 7,300. Pay the extra $200 for a good quarterback. Quali Conley is kind of the bright spot. It's just because of the volume. He gets 2 to 4 targets a game. He's got double-digit carries every game but one. Just there's so much variance with his fantasy output, and 6,800 is a tougher click. If you want a stud, get a stud. If you want a cheap option, there are cheap running back options on this slate. It's just a weird price and weird situation for him. Tet McMillan, all right, I know some of you guys, he may be a top 5 or top 10 wide receiver in the nation, but for the Tet truthers, you guys need to look in the mirror. And how often has he paid off even 8,600? He really hasn't. 3 times the entire season, only twice above 30 points. And really, if I'm paying 8,600 for a wide receiver, I'd like him to get 30 points. It's kind of what I'm hoping for. And, like you look at a guy like Travis Hunter, who's usually more expensive than Ted, but he's hit that ceiling just more often. And his floor is high. So Ted's good, but why wouldn't you just pay for Chris Hunter? Chris Hunter has increased usage, 28 targets over the last 3 games. Why wouldn't you just pay down for Jeremiah Patterson? He's 15 targets over the last 3 games is just fine for a $3,200 wide receiver. If you really love this Arizona team and you want to stack this game, I'd definitely go for those cheaper guys that don't eat up quite as much salary. Keon Burnett has missed the last couple of games, and Sam Olsen's a beneficiary, but he's $100 more than Patterson, and Patterson's been getting more usage. So Tet's a good wide receiver. It seems like Fafita should be better than he is. It hasn't been there for DFS. Again, it's rivalry week. This is a big rivalry. Anything could happen, but it's just looking at the data. It's all it is looking at how the season has gone so far. California at SMU. Is SMU going to face a hangover from the emotional win over Stanford? It's a big question, and they're traveling to play a team in a tough environment who's got a good defense. For Mendoza already said they're 6-6 in the post-game interview if you watched it. So was it foreshadowing? Most likely, but you never know. 6,800, not a bad price. But 13 points the last time I played him, and then 299 and 3 the following week. That's just kind of how it's been. the last couple of weeks for guys like Mendoza, Isaac Brown. Oof. I think Mendoza and Brown are on the same team the same week too. That's terrible. SMU has been a little bit more vulnerable to the pass before locking down Virginia last week, but Virginia, their run defense is legit though. I don't like Ott and Thomas. It's a tough thing to figure out. Ott still only has one legit game all year. Thomas is still getting touchdowns, which kind of makes the Ott guys mad, which, if you play Ott, obviously 6K is way too cheap for him. I just don't love the matchup. Again, if we get Jaden Ott of last year, lock him in. It's just impossible to predict. And this wide receiver room is kind of shuffled around a little bit. Merriweather was clearly prioritized in his first game. Now he's down to 3,800 because he's only got 7 targets and 2 catches in the last 2 games combined. So there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Jack Endries, kind of still the top option, but Dice just had more targets last week, so that's even tough. We got Hunter and Brady who are still getting looks. A couple of good games. Kyon Grays was prioritized a little bit and then didn't even play last week. It's just kind of a mess. They're just cheap as all they are. On the SMU side, Kevin Jennings, again, very, very fair price. Again, why would you pay 71 for Noah Fafita when you can get Jennings at 7K? Still hasn't been needed to use his legs. And honestly, I think they might be saving his legs for big games. So we'll see, and, keeping that in their pocket. The reason he hasn't had to use his legs is because Brashard Smith has been an absolute stud. 8,100, very fair price for him. And he had a down game. He did have a down game last week, I guess, but a down game is 60 yards and a touchdown. Not good for this price, but still a solid game. Jordan Hudson's in concussion protocol. If he plays, he's in a stellar spot. If he doesn't, everyone else is in a stellar spot. Specifically, Roderick Daniels being the guy sub 4K because he will still get a carry or two in all likelihood. So, I like that a lot. The one thing is like, Hudson had 7 targets last week. Daniels had 5. Smith had 5. Dixon had 5. Hibner had 4. Stone Eby even got a target. The nice thing is that they're not splitting targets and all getting 3. They're splitting targets and all getting 5 to 7. So at these prices, these SMU guys are in great spots. That's probably the side you're looking at most in this game. Miami at Syracuse. Miami heavy favorite on the road, but don't really feel good going to the Dome for the last game of the season, needing a win to get in the ACC championship, especially since Miami's given up points this year and Syracuse can put up points. And Syracuse, if they win, they're 9-3 after a sub 500 season. I'd be playing tough for that, especially in Brown's first year as head coach. Cam Ward 10-7, potential is always there. Just about where you want to spend your money. Again, pair him with Brady Cook. You could probably make it work if Cam Ward is your dude. Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher still splitting, although Damian Martinez has had 15 and 16 carries the last 2 games. So Fletcher's 4 and 6. So maybe a little bit of separation there. And Martinez just hasn't found the end zone in a while. But this is the cheapest he's been all year, and he does get some targets. This is more of a mid-price point for Fletcher. So if you want the run game, I think you're looking at Martinez here. And then Jordan Lyle had a big game last week. Most of it was in the second half, but he was in the first half. But Martinez still outsnapped these guys by 30. So Martinez is probably the guy. And then this wide receiver room is the same as it was. All 3 of these top guys are priced down a little bit. George had the big game. Restrepo, always potential is there. Horton, the potential is always there. But I don't know. Arroyo had a big game. 3,800 is a much fairer price to pay. What I will tell you is that as far as snap count goes and actual routes run, it's Restrepo, Horton, George, and Arroyo, and then a big drop off to Sam Brown. But Brown did catch some targets when he was in. He caught all 3 of his targets last week, so there is that. But mostly, if you're stacking, you're looking at those top 4 guys. On the Syracuse side, Kyle McCord is just expensive. He does have the potential to get there. He does have upside with how much they throw. Miami looks okay against the pass. It's like if you look at season long, but they've also played Wake and Florida State and Georgia Tech, who ran for 271, and Virginia Tech, who ran for 206. Like, you can throw on Miami and score points. So McCord, 9K is a tough price to click, but the potential's there. Same with the Quint Allen, 8,400 is a tough price to click, but he's so involved in the passing game. And it doesn't even matter. Like, he could average 2.5 yards a carry, but he'll get 20 carries and 6 targets. So like the opportunity's there. Jackson Meeks, 8 or more targets in 8 straight games, 10, 9, and 11 the last 3. Pena had been getting peppered, but he missed part of last week as well. It was UConn, and the coach said he probably could have gone, but they kept him out in the second half just as a precautionary thing to keep him healthy, knowing there's more important games ahead. Hatcher, it seems to be a little bit more injured, possibly a sprained ACL. But, with Gill is the one who had the big game last week as far as like the surprise, and he's been priced, but that's probably more so because Pena and Hatcher were injured. But Oronde Gadsden has been on an absolute tear lately, and I just don't know if Miami has faced anybody like Gadsden, so I don't know if they can defend him. Maybe they can. They definitely can, possibly, but a lot of helper words in that sentence. But the thing is, like, he's a huge dude. He's like 6'5", 240, tough to defend. So, if they want to stop him, they might have to double him. I don't know. The Syracuse passing game is scary. And 28.5 points is still a lot of points, even if you're projected to lose by double digits. So they will be throwing a lot. It's a throwing game script. They throw a lot to begin with. So don't mind stacking this game overall. There's a lot of points, and especially the Syracuse side that might go a little bit underowned just because of the game matchup. Notre Dame and USC, the last game on the main slate. Notre Dame probably needs to win to secure their CFP spot because their schedule hasn't been super soft, but it hasn't been great. USC just is there to ruin Notre Dame's college football playoff. Riley Leonard, always fair. One of those guys that the ceiling game potential is always there, and USC is not a scary defense. Definitely one of those QBs you can always play naked. Jadarian Price actually outsnapped Love last week, got 4 more carries than him as well. But it's always a weird game when you play Army. They only ran 47 plays previously. Their low in plays run was 54 against Louisville. So it's hard to take a lot from that Army game. But Love is getting up there in price, and Price is going down in price or staying the same. I don't even remember. But, Price is the easier price to pay. Wide receiver room, even though they only threw the ball 18 times, 9 guys still got targets in this wide receiver room against Army. The one thing is Bo Collins still got 4 of those 18 throws, like 4 targets on those 18 attempts. So still probably the number one guy, and they're all cheap. And this USC defense, man, you can throw on them. So I don't mind taking a shot on these guys, for savings. But like I said, there's a lot of places to save on this slate, so it may not be necessary. A stackable game, though. On the USC side, Jaden Maeva had a big game against Nebraska, looked okay against UCLA, holds the ball a little bit too long. His big throw rate is down from Miller Moss's. His turnover-worthy plays are higher than Miller Moss's, but 6,500, I don't mind it. This might be the best offense Notre Dame has faced. I think it's arguable. Their defense has looked really, really good, especially recently, but I don't know that they've seen an offense like this. Woody Marks, just expensive, always has the potential to get there. 8,500 is just a tough click. So I don't mind him, just don't love the price. One thing I will say is that Branch and Hudson seem to be getting the targets from Maeva. Hudson has had 6 and 8 targets the last 2, and that's a pretty good price if he's going to be a number 1 wide receiver. So anyone in this wide receiver room could have the spike game. It's USC is similar to even Notre Dame. They're different teams, obviously, but there's just a roulette at wide receiver. Don't mind it, don't love it, but it's a late hammer that could, if it goes off, you could start catching up if you're behind to start the day. If you didn't think that stone had enough color, well, yeah, I forgot to tell you, it's called a stone. If you didn't already know that, it's one of the tools we have at SHIPIT Nation that we use for all of our sports. This is actually this week's Friday stone, but as you can see, we color games to tell you what type of game environment it's going to be. We give you grades for rush defense, pass defense, run pass ratio, each guy's targets and rushes per game. So all of the information you need to know right in one spot. And the only place to get the stone is SHIPIT Nation. And, we're still only about halfway through football season as the calendar is, especially with so many bowl games yet to come and then NFL playoffs. There's still plenty of, squeeze left. There's still, I'm not even going to try juice left, juice to squeeze. No, shouldn't have tried. Told myself I wasn't going to try and I did it anyway. But it's a great price. You want every sport all year to get the projections, the stone for NFL, college football, MMA, PGA, all of the things, plus the Discord community, which is awesome. I love the Discord. Greatest Discord I've ever been a part of. It's only $700 for the entire year. We do have single sports that you can do as well. If you just want to do football, it includes NFL and PGA as the single sport options. Football includes college football and NFL, so that's great. We have a Black Friday special. If you've been wary, you get 50% off of your first month of All Access. So you remember what I showed you, that All Access, these prices down here? If you get the monthly or up to annual, you get 50% off your first month. And also, if you do want the football package just for the rest of the season, we slash those prices as well. So this will get you all the way through the end of the regular season for both NFL and college football, the championship games, the Army-Navy game, and all of the bowl games. So it's still a good time to join, cash in on this deal. This Black Friday deal is a limited time, so get in as soon as you can. And the biggest, like, aside from the Discord, because the Discord is my number one reason to be here, but this is just last week. This isn't all season. This isn't this month. This is just last week. All of the winners we have. Hamhock, our college football guy, winning at golf. That's how it works. We have guys that cross over sports and still have success because we have the greatest tools. We have the greatest content. We have the greatest content creators. The dudes digging in and doing the research and presenting it and giving all of the info. But Jay Bannock, Sean Sullivan, Jay Anthony with a bunch of NBA Showdown shippers, like just a lot of first place success last week. It was a solid week for SHIPIT Nation. And like I said, cash in on that deal now and you can be part of the nation with us. We welcome you with open arms. We'd love to have you because it's about getting better. It's not about, just our picks and our plays, because honestly, my picks aren't any better than your picks, but we teach you about process. We educate you on the proper ways to build your lineups and how to attack things in late swap and all the necessary things that come with DFS. But always remember, rule number one, college football is fun. Enjoy that process I just discussed. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy watching college football. We get multiple days of college football this week with big slates. So it's such a great weekend. Be thankful, be grateful that we have the opportunity to not only watch college football, but play DFS and hopefully get our lineups to the top of that leaderboard. And even more, hopefully, I will see you there. But for now, we'll see you next week.